Teddy, have you got something to say? Have you got something to say? Oh, thank you. That's it. Sit up though. There we are.
That's a very well-trained dog. Kiko won't bark for you, will you? She hasn't learned to do that.
That's Teddy saying, welcome to Pet Talk with him and with me, Anna, and our fabulous two guests. We've got Pete Wedderburn today and
Kiko.
And Kiko. Oh, Kiko. Welcome both. Now, Pete is a very well-known vet. He's been all over TV, radio, he writes, and of course, long before I got Teddy, I got this wonderful book, Pet Subjects for Christmas. And it strikes me as being quite interesting that it's just before Christmas in that we are doing this interview, which means that it's an opportunity for everyone to also find this book as a Christmas present for someone. So Pete, now you're obviously extremely busy, and I loved your book because what shone through it for me is your love of animals. And I'm just wondering, where did that begin?
Well, do you know, for me, that began really at the beginning of life. It's a strange thing, but like my earliest memory would be when I was just 3 or 4 years of age. And when I was that old, I already, at that stage, I wanted to own a pet shop. That's what I wanted to do. And then when I got to about the age of 5, I kind of realized that, well, owning a pet shop's not quite it, because that's complicated in different ways. Even then, the idea of having animals and then selling them to other people, and I was thinking, oh, I don't really like that idea. And so the idea came up of being a vet. So I was only 5 years of age. And that's been it really ever since. And it made life very easy for me in some ways, because the biggest challenge to being a vet, to becoming a vet, really is an academic challenge. It's like if that's your goal, there are a number of tasks you have to accomplish along the way, the biggest of which is getting the exam results. So it meant that I knew from a very early age that I had to be very focused on getting those exam results, and it made it much easier for me to actually work hard at school and make sure that I got where I had to get. So yeah, I'm very fortunate in that way. So you would call this a real calling or vocation, like it's something which, and it's not the case for all vets. Some vets decide to be a vet in their mid-teens or even late teens or even in their 20s. But for me, it was right there from the start. And there, if you talk to vets, I reckon probably around 50% of vets, they would say that's the case.
That's why I loved your book, and that's why I really wanted to invite you on, because I got that sense of it being very much a calling, and it doesn't surprise me that it was there when you were little. And I think also the interesting thing, you know, that at an early age you started to make moral decisions as to how you wanted to interact with animals as well. You didn't want to be selling them, you didn't want them to be in cages, and so already you were thinking about the quality of the animal's life. And I think that's fascinating that already at that age you were making that kind of decision.
Yes, it's a strange one, and it to me it really is almost like a, I think spiritual is the wrong word, but it feels like it's what I was meant to do. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like I had it.
I think spiritual is the right word, actually.
Yes,
because it's about a connection with something that you're not quite sure what it is, but it's there.
Yes.
It's
yes.
indefinable.
Now, so I suppose as a vet, you're very much trained to be a scientist, and so I always try to put a scientific light on things, as well as, if you like, the belief, spiritual, intangible side of things. So for somebody who has no, if you like, spiritual beliefs, then the way I would put it would be that we all have a particular genetic configuration that means, and cultural as well, from when we're born, and that gives us certain strengths and likes and desires. And to me, that's, if you like, the scientific side of a calling, is that my particular configuration of genes and very early upbringing instilled me with this desire to work with animals, and a realization the most effective way to work with animals was by being a vet. So really, it's an interesting one, though. And I have to say, through my career, I've been a bit driven by that, the idea of a calling. And when I say a calling, I mean, okay, so I had a calling to be a vet, but then as time's gone on, I've done different things, and very much that is driven by the same concept of a calling. In other words, by listening to the sense of what I'm meant to be doing, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
That sounds a bit woo, but that's how it feels to me.
No, I think actually in the outside the science lab, that's just very human. And what we're talking about really is following your heart. You know, you have a strong sense of what you need to do next, and the direction that you're heading in. And I think part of that, it seems to me, is to step out, or to use your experience as a vet to help bring a better understanding of animals, which is exactly what Pet Talk is about, which is the other reason why I wanted to invite you on.
Yes, it's the same sort of concept.
It
yes.
is. It
yes.
is indeed.
Yeah. So for me, like, once I'd become a vet, and once I set up my own practice, and once I feel like I ticked all those boxes, the shift moved slightly towards being, well, the biggest problem that I see in, if you like, in the world of animals with people, as in pet animals, is a very broad lack of information reaching people as it should reach people. And that's when I began to work in the media, and to do things like writing newspaper columns and writing books and doing radio and television, was to try to get out more information to people, so that less bad stuff happens by accident, if you like, or by ignorance. Because I think a lot of the time it does. People just don't know what to do, and they don't know what they ought to know. And you can correct that by passing on information, and podcasts like this are a really good way of doing that.
It's so true. It's, you know, I meet people with dogs all the time, you know, when I'm walking with Teddy, and you hear all sorts of different things that are happening, and we value shared experience. You know, I was there when I first started to live with Teddy, and he was, you know, 8 weeks old, and I had a wonderful book by Victoria Stilwell, which I called the Bible, which helped me in those weeks when I was counting the days to get to puppy class. You know, giving me ideas of how to work with him in the most loving and understanding way. That then got built on, and it's the sharing of information. We all learn by sharing experience and information. So it's a very important aspect of your work, I think.
And it's become more so, actually, as time's gone by, because I think with the way that we now have the internet, it's easier than ever to share information, easier than ever. And like, you can communicate with thousands or millions of people just like that. And so if there are important messages, you know, you can get them out there, which is great.
It certainly is. The first story in your book, I thought, is probably my favorite. And it's the story of how you found Finzi, one of your dogs.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Finzi.
I should go and get Finzi, actually. We'll go and get Finzi.
Oh, that would be lovely.
These two can change position. Hold on a second. Come here. She's a bit big for this, really. Come on, up my lap here. Come on. Oh, there she is. Look, you can see she's gone a bit old and grey now, hasn't she?
She has. She's getting a little bit older.
There she is. Yes, the story of Finzi was quite remarkable, because what actually happened with her was we found her she was a puppy, probably about 4 months old. And I was out on a Sunday afternoon with my family, and we just noticed this really pile of fur on a bit of wasteland. When we looked closely, we could see it was a dog that was just lying there, and she wasn't moving at all. And so we went up and had a look at her, and she was dying. She was a puppy who had severe dehydration. When I looked at her gums, they were as white as sheets, and she was in very serious trouble. So what we did with her was it was very, very fortunate that I was a vet, because it was a Sunday and it would have been quite difficult otherwise. So as it was, what we did is we took her home and we set her up at home in on a drip, and then I gave her a blood transfusion, and I happened to have blood in the fridge in the clinic, because we'd had a dog that needed it and we didn't need to use all the blood, so there was some spare blood there. So what happened was then, I started to talk about it on social media at the time. This it was 7 or 8 years ago, but it became a thing then because people were following the saga, because genuinely we didn't know if Finzi would live or die because she was so badly ill. As it turned out, it was a very difficult night because we literally didn't know whether she would be alive or dead in the morning. And I was getting up through the night checking her, and I was very worried about her. But the good news is that we gave her a general treatment for what commonly goes wrong in puppies at that age, and that included giving her a good strong worm dose, as well as all the support with a blood transfusion and antibiotics and other things. And what happened was that evening she passed massive volumes of worms and blood in her poo as well. And so it became very obvious that what was wrong with her was simply she had a very, very high worm burden. And so the good news was that meant that once we had treated for worms, well, then she began to turn the corner quite quickly. And she was still very, very shaky that Monday, but by the Tuesday, she was up and about again and eating. And really, she went on from there to become our much adored pet over the years. The sort of sad PS to the story, and I can't remember if I put it in the book, I think I did, was that on the Wednesday after that, we were in the area and where we'd found Finzi, and we were just checking around that area, and deep in the undergrowth we found the body of a dog just like Finzi, a male dog, and he'd been dead for some days. And so I think it's very obvious that somebody dumped the two puppies there, and that we didn't see whether he was alive when we were there. I don't know, but he wasn't visible, and so he died. So anyway, she survived, and like I say, she's been a great pet. But it was a heck of a saga at the time, because it was real. I mean, I felt like I wasn't alone because I put it on social media. There were thousands of people following this dog's story, yeah, it was very dramatic.
I think, listening to you, and it's very easy to fall into the trap of, being very condemning of humanity. But I think that's not the most helpful approach to take. And I think one of the things that I feel comes across from you is not just the love of animals, but of humans too. And I think that's really important, because if we're going to get people to rethink and to reconsider their approach to the animal world, then we also have to be understanding, and however outraged we might be, we also need to know how to reach out to them if we're going to have any impact. And I think that that's something that I feel is one of your special skills, can we say?
I don't know. I think it's very difficult. I think it's very quick. People are very quick to blame other people. I think that the answer really isn't in trying. The answer, we won't get anywhere by doing that. We won't make any advances. You could say if you found those people, they should be prosecuted, and yes, they should be. But even then, I don't know if that would change anything. It would. I would wonder if that might just make people more careful about what they do when they're going to do that kind of a thing, to make sure they don't get caught. To me, the real answer is more long-term than that. And that means changing the culture. That means changing the way that adults think. And that the way you do that is by talking to young people. And it's one of the things that I've done over the years, and really I should do more of it, but that is to engage with young children at schools. And there's every year in Ireland, we have World Animal Week, the first week of October. It's around the birthday of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals. And for many years, what we did as a vet practice, and vets around the country would do this, is visit schools and talk to children about animals, and really talking to sort of 5, 6, 7-year-old children, explaining to them that animals are sentient. You don't use that word sentient, perhaps. Explaining to them that animals feel just like us. They feel pain, they feel fear, they feel happiness, they want to play, and sometimes they want to cry. Just making children realize that animals are just as sensitive as they are. And more than that, that animals can't look after themselves, and that we have a responsibility to care for them properly. And that there's always help for them, even if you get to a difficult place. Like obviously the owners of these puppies did get to a difficult place with the puppies because they were sick and they didn't know what to do. So they just abandoned them. But what you would like would be that those adults maybe at some stage had heard and had understood that there was help for them there, so that they didn't need to just dump the dogs, and that what they could have done is taken the dogs to a local animal welfare group, and the dogs would have been looked after properly. So yes, I think rather than trying to blame the individuals, it's better to try and take a kind of helicopter view of the thing and say, okay, those adults haven't done the best thing for those dogs by any means, but rather than punishing them, it makes more sense to start with who they were 20 years previously and try and change these young children's attitudes so that when they grow up to be the adults, they won't do that thing the next time. So that really is the idea.
I think so. I think that, and that's why I feel the warmth that you have for both species or all species is exactly what we need, rather than just being very condemning and actually being condemning and rejecting of humanity as a whole as well, because that's not who we are. That's who some people are, out of ignorance, out of lots of failures within themselves. And we need to have compassion for all species, including our own, and work from there. That's not to say, as you said, that we should tolerate this or in any way. I still think, a jail sentence, once it's done, is a very good thing. And many of us will have strong feelings about that. But we also have to take a different approach. And the approach, as you say, is to improve understanding and the culture, so that it's not happening like it is. And I think that, on the whole, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yes, I mean, the other way I see things, which I think can be helpful sometimes, is to look at, if you like, the spectrum of behaviors towards pets and towards animals that's out there. So if you want, originally, if you like, what I do is I see two sides to this. Oops, let's get these lined up. That's it. Okay. So what you have on this side, you've got people being cruel to animals, okay? And people being very cruel to animals way over here. Oops, way over there, okay? People being very cruel to animals. On this side, you've got people pampering animals and being perhaps over the top of being so-called good to them. So I think what's happened is, what people are sometimes critical of is when people start to do things like buying fancy clothes for dogs, and people start painting dogs' toenails, and people start sitting them up at tables and feeding them and giving them birthday parties and getting them married. And this spectrum's moving over here all the time and getting a bit extreme. But on the other hand, at the same time as that's happening, people are being less cruel to animals. People are being kind to them generally. So do you see what I mean? So the whole spectrum has moved from over here to over here. And so they both go hand in hand. And that means to me that you have to be maybe not so critical when people are over the top, silly about their pets, and see that that's also pulling everybody else with them and making the worst of behaviors happen less often. And so that's the way I see our culture is changing. And look, it has changed in the last 20, 30 years. Here in Ireland, one of the big barometers that I've used to assess people's attitudes to animals has been the number of stray dogs that are euthanized every year in our dog pounds. And Ireland's only a small country, population maybe of 5-6 million. And I'm from Scotland originally, but when I came to Ireland 30 years ago, there were around 30,000 dogs that were euthanized every year in the dog pounds, 30,000. And a lot of that was kind of happening behind closed doors and people didn't really realize it. But what happened was some vets at the time, one vet in particular at the time, he had to go to his local pound, and every week there was like a dozen animals lined up to be killed for no other reason that they weren't wanted. And he was so outraged at this that he set up a national forum of everybody who might be involved in that problem to work together. And what we did is we had these meetings and we wrote down the steps that we needed to take in order to change this terrible number of dogs being euthanized. Anyway, if you fast forward 30 years, now there's less than 200 dogs being euthanized every year, less than 200. So to go from over 30,000 to less than 200, to me, that's a barometer as to how, I mean, it's way more complex than that because there's lots of reasons for this happening. And, you know, culture's changed an awful lot in many, many ways in that period. But nonetheless, it's a barometer to me of how much more important dogs have become to people in Ireland. And I think what's happened in Ireland is probably reflected in the UK, in other European countries, in the States, around the world. Animals are becoming more important to people, and there's more recognition of the fact that they're sentient creatures just like ourselves. They're far more like us than they are not like us, if you like.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the advances that have been made in behaviorism and dog understanding dog behavior is also a part of that, because it's helping to shine a light on understanding, you know, the way that dogs work, if you like.
Well, you see, there's been a sea change in that 30 years as well. There's been a big change in how we understand animals' minds. And I find this fascinating. But basically, back then, 30 years ago, it was kind of accepted scientific truth that dogs and cats and other animals were essentially a bunch of reflexes, you know, that they just, if you poked them, they moved away, and they weren't thinking about moving away, they just did it automatically. It was like everything they did was automatic. And when you were training dogs, it was a very basic thing whereby you do something and you reward them and they do it again because they're being rewarded by a reflex. So animals were very much simple, kind of unthinking creatures. That's what we understood. But then what happened was it was primarily, I think, I suppose the advances in dynamic imaging, whereby you could use special MRI scans to look into animals' brains and observe activity at different times or when different things were happening. And what they realized was that in situations where animals might be frightened or in pain or happy or anxious, precisely the same parts of the brain were activated and lit up on the MRI scans as in humans. And what that forced us to realize really was that if an animal looks like they're having an emotion, well, then they are having that emotion. And that now has become the, if you like, the benchmark for animal welfare across the board, whether it's people working with lab animals that may be subjected to procedures that could be uncomfortable, or whether it's people working with dogs and training dog behavior, or whether it's people working with horses that are, and farm animals across the board. The new benchmark is that if an animal looks like it's in pain, then it is in pain. And you can't wrap it up in cotton wool or anything. That's the way it is. And that's a big change. And the other big change was the Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, which was a few years ago in Cambridge. What happened was there was a big international meeting of neurologists, and what they did was they basically thought about the whole deep issue of what consciousness is. And what they did, and it was in July 2012, they basically made a declaration, if you like a global declaration. This is very significant. Look at that, it's nearly 20 years ago now, which is quite astonishing to me. But they basically, it was neuroscientists, neuropharmacologists, neurophysiologists, neuroanatomists, all of these people. And basically they were reassessing how consciousness was defined in humans and in animals. And they basically made the declaration that basically the absence of a forebrain doesn't mean that an animal doesn't experience what they call affective states, and that lots of evidence now indicates that non-human animals have the neuroanatomical, neurochemical, and neurophysiological substrates of consciousness. And so consequently, the weight of evidence indicates that humans are not unique in possessing consciousness. Non-human animals, including all mammals and birds and many other creatures, including octopuses, also possess consciousness. So it was like a huge thing. Up till then, science had denied that. But this was just nearly 20 years ago. This was science saying animals are conscious just like us. That's a huge step forwards in our civilization, I think.
It certainly is. And I think most people who live with animals would be sitting here listening to this or watching, aghast at the prospect that it took this long for science to reach that conclusion. It's plainly evident to most of us.
It is, you're right, you're right.
You know, and you think, well, duh, you know, but it's important.
It's actually, it's one of my favorite sayings that was by a French revolutionary, I can't remember his name, but what he said was, the present order is the disorder of tomorrow. So like 30 years ago, we did certain things and believed certain things that were absolutely normal to us. And it's only with looking back on them that we realized we were completely out of order. And this is a good example of that.
Exactly. I think it is very significant because it's out of declarations like that policy is created.
That's right.
Which affects the well-being of animals and gives them a legal status they would otherwise not have.
Yes.
So it's very significant. So now we've been talking about the relationship between society and animals. And I'd like maybe to shift a little bit to talk about personal relationships. So what would you consider to be some of the key elements in having a good relationship with your dog or cat, or whatever it is that you're sharing your life with?
Well, that's a very good question. I think probably the most important thing is to spend time together. You know, like with any companion, any friend. And I think that's difficult sometimes because people tend to have very busy lives, and it's very easy not to spend time with animals. It's very easy not to slow down and sit there with the cat on your lap, or you know, it's easy to rush the walk with your dogs and to be on your phone during the walk. But I think that if you want to give the animals the experience they deserve, and if you want to look after yourself as well, then I think making time to be with them, to be very consciously with them, to be thinking about them and watching them and engaging with them, I think that's the best thing we can all do. And if you do that, then everything else just sort of falls into place, because you become aware of their needs and their likes, and you notice signs of ill health, so you can deal with those early. I think that's really about it. Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better answer. It's so crucial. It's that notion of spending time and engaging.
Yeah.
And they love that.
They do. They do. Yeah.
They respond to that. You know, our cats, the first one came to us. She was our neighbor's cat, but they never spent time with her. And she used to always end up spending time with us. And of course, you know, that was not because they didn't care about her. It was simply they were working and we were working from home. They went out to work, we were working from home. And so it was the case that she found company, and she was very social. Everybody in the street knew her. She had people she visited regularly. She didn't like to be on her own. That was the thing. And then we moved, and they asked us if we would like to take her with us. Probably one of the most wonderful things that could have happened for humans and cat. And that's just, I think that really sums it up. Cleo knew how to find friends because she needed them. It's that what you just said, spend time with them. That's what she wanted. It wasn't food. We didn't feed her. We discovered that plenty of people thought that she must be starving, but she wasn't. She was a well cared for cat in that sense, you know. Her owners did care about her very much. It was just that they weren't around. And then a baby came, and they had even less time, and she was hanging out with us even more at that point.
Yes.
And it got to the
cats are very good at doing that.
Exactly. It got to the point where she went home for meals, and then she disappeared, and she was with us. She had meals at the store and cuddles with us. That was how she worked things out.
She was telling you. Have you read the book Six Dinner Sid?
No.
It's a lovely children's book. I can't remember who wrote it, but Six Dinner Sid was a cat who loved his food and attention so much that he went from door to door in a neighborhood, and so there were 6 people who thought that they owned him.
Yeah, that's cats. They know where they are loved, and I think that's the thing that we all need to remember, is that our furry or feathery companions know where they are loved, and if we can help them to understand that they are loved and wanted and build that interaction, then we're in for a most rewarding relationship.
Yeah.
And so I want to say thank you very much for your time with us today. And I know that you've got you're busy doing all sorts of things. And the latest that I know about is the Pet Fix Club.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, Pet Fix Club. Can you read one? Pet Fix. Can you read that? Is that the right way around for you? Or is that a mirror image?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Pet Fix, total pet care. So basically, I suppose for the last 20 years, I've been doing more and more work in the media, and that's involved often answering people's queries. So members of the public would write letters to the newspaper, they'd phone the radio station, they'd phone the TV station, and I'd listen to them and I'd give them some suggestions. And I find myself doing more and more of that. Like I have a very busy Facebook page called Pete the Vet, and people would send me messages through that. And I'm answering all these questions. And then a friend approached me and said, you know, you're doing all that work. Is there some way we could help get that, if you like, more systematic, more organized, more effective? And so then with their help, then I set up this website called PetFix. It's petfix.com. And we made it into a club. So PetFix Club. And the idea is that if you join the club, and it costs you €7 a month to do that, what's that, about £6? Then you have access to a big library of resources, articles and videos and podcasts. And as well as that, we've got some, I suppose, with the help of computers and the internet, we've got some tools. So there's a triage tool. So if your pet does fall unwell, you can work out very easily with the help of the computer what you need to do. Do you need to go to the vet or what? And if you're not sure after that process, there's a button called the Ask the Vet button. If you click on that button, then a message gets sent to our veterinary team, and somebody will get back to you within the hour, and you can have this chat then, this discussion about what you need to do to help your pet. As well as that, we've got a thing called a personalized pet planner. So you answer like 50 questions about your pet, about, you know, how you feed them, how you engage with them, what your parasite control is. At the end of that, you get given then some recommendations as to how you can improve your pet's health and quality of life. So really, it's a website which is all about improving your pet's health and quality of life. That's what it's all about, and helping you through perhaps the difficult times when you're not quite sure what to do. I think vets do a great job, and you know, absolutely, if your pet is sick, then you need to take them to the vet for the important treatment. But I think there's a lot of help that can be given to owners and to pets outside of that immediate hands-on situation. A lot of what people need is information, and my job is to pass on that information, and PetFix helps me do that most effectively.
Certainly in the first year that I had Teddy, I think I spent a good deal of time on the phone to my vet, or at the vet, getting her to look at, you know, little things that would crop up, because I didn't know what was going on. It's, you know, the first time that he vomited, I thought, oh my God, you know, what's going on? And then I realized that there's such a thing as, you know, hunger bile, you know, and that he was hungry, and I just needed to adjust my feeding schedule a little bit in the morning.
Yes.
Here and all these things that happen, and you don't know because you never lived with that species before. And it's so useful to have a resource like that. Yes,
you see, one of the problems right now is that there's been a surge in pet ownership, and at the same time, there's a bit of a recruitment issue for vets. That seems like there's a shortage of vets at the moment, and so it is. You know, not every animal needs to go to the vet absolutely every time. Sometimes people just want the ear of a vet. And you described some of the situations where that's the truth. And so I see PetFix as being very much complementary to, like, I think that if you like, the big picture of caring for pets has just been extended a little bit with the advent of the internet. And I think Google's very bad sometimes. Sometimes search engines take people to the wrong places. It can frighten people, and it can just not be very helpful. So PetFix is a way of giving people a safe place where they can trust what they hear, they can trust the advice, but they can get that very easily and very quickly. Our aim is to provide good quality veterinary information to everybody, everywhere, all the time, at an affordable price. That's really what our mission is. And I think there's a strong need there, and that's what I'm busy doing.
Fantastic. Well, we must all be grateful for the wonderful work that you are doing, and certainly I'm very grateful for your time this morning. Given,
I'm really glad that you asked me, and I'm really glad you enjoyed my book. It's a few years, I think it's 4 years since I wrote the book now, and it was, yeah, I really enjoyed writing it, and it gives me great pleasure to you and people like you say that you enjoyed reading it. So thank you very much for doing that.
It's an absolute joy, and I will put a link to your website, the book, and to the PetFix Club as well, so that people can find you. Thank you so much, Pete, for joining this morning.
Thank you, Anna. It's been lovely chatting to you. I'm not sure where your dog's gone now, but like my own ones, they've he's sleeping.
Yeah, he's having his nap.
I think Finzi left the room. Thanks, Anna. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.